Hey everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of
Dudes of Kung Fu.
Outstanding. How are you, my friend?
Recovering from a pretty busy week. As a lot of people who follow me on social media know, we're in the designing phase of my next book, which is actually about tonight's topic, which is the Chum Kiu. So my whole life has been living, breathing, editing, re-editing Chum Kiu for like nonstop 4 hours in addition to my regular teaching schedule per day. What about you?
Oh no, things are good. I'm just a regular working guy, so I'm gonna pretend like I know what Chum Kiu is tonight. Um, so what Alex is talking about is tonight's podcast is all about Chum Kiu. If you listened to last week's, it was all about Sunim Tao, and we're calling this part of our form series. Season 3 is going to be dedicated to really getting in depth on the arts that we love and teach, Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do, and we're taking the first 6 podcasts of Season 3 and really going to dissect each form. And the response to last week's been great. How bud?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, from my own students and the people I know who've listened to it, they've been saying like, "Wow, it's really amazing that we actually, instead of just kind of doing our normal various topics, we're really going into one topic per episode in detail, and they love it." And like the messages that have been flowing into the Facebook page have been pretty amazing.
Yeah, I even the messages I've been getting like on my personal page and got friends of mine that listen to the podcast. They've been really
Somebody
happy.
said they listened to us for 6 hours or something like
Yeah, I
that.
just
Like
got a
binge
message
listened.
today from one of my kung fu cousins up in Canada, and he sent me a message saying he listened to 6 hours worth of us today. I mean, that's like we gotta mail him a check or something because that's
I couldn't imagine listening to your voice for so long. I would want to
my
bash my head
voice,
into the nearest
my
plate glass
voice,
window.
my voice. I'm the one that brings
My
a little
voice,
class to this
my
fucking thing.
ass, a little class. Yeah, of course, your voice. We're talking about your voice. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it just shows that the power of the podcast format is really amazing because you can listen to them while you're, doing your daily commute or workout or whatever, and it's a great way to. It's also a great way to unplug because I find that if I'm not listening to a podcast, like if I'm on the train, then I'm futzing around with my phone and I'm checking this and doing that or whatever. But if I put a podcast in, I can just put my phone away and listen and relax. And it's like a really great medium. And looking forward to more people finding out about it, and we can hopefully spread our propaganda amongst more people, a wider audience.
Yeah, and listen, just while we're talking podcasts here, there's another podcast I'd like to suggest to you folks. Straight Blast Gyms has a new podcast. It's a once a month podcast. And if you know anything about Matt Thornton and the Straight Blast Gyms, this is the shit, man. Matt
Is he doing it himself, or is it like Matt Thornton actually doing the podcast, or is it like his students or somebody, or who's doing it?
it's the last one was Matt when they had special guests on was Chris Howder and Randy Couture.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
they're doing it the right way.
That's great.
Yeah. So check out the
Yeah.
SBG and their podcast is phenomenal and
You mean they're doing it the right way in that they only do it once a month?
right.
Not like we
It's
try to pump one out every week. It's like, oh man, it's Friday again. We have to talk about something. I was also thinking like 6 episodes we're gonna tackle each of the forms, and then like the latter 6 episodes will I guess go into topics more related to JKD or whatever. And I'm thinking like, damn, well, we only have 6 forms, and then it's like, what about next season? It's like, have we kind of shot our bolt as far as that goes? Because if we were doing martial art like Hong Kun or whatever, we might have like 30 plus forms with weapons and 2-man sets, and we could kind of really squeeze that for some seasons. But it's like Wing Chun, it's like, oh man, well, guys, all right, well, we pretty much talked about everything we could talk about. So that's all I'm gonna say about that, right?
that's funny. But
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll come up with something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, another thing too that people were also very happy about last episode is they love the rap song, the Kung Fu Genius rap song, which
Dude, that was incredible. The Kung Fu Genius rap song. That was
yeah. Kes the MC did a really great job, and of course, again, people still ask me if that was me rapping. It's not. It's Kes. Kes raps as if he's me, but I just to make it clear, I would never talk like that. That's that's pretty typical hip hop bravado, but it's pretty funny because those people who are in the know that was kind of in response to a very funny attack that was placed on me in Hong Kong newspapers last year, and which has spawned the nickname Kung Fu Genius, which now everybody calls me. And I'm now, so I guess I can announce this because it's official. I'm now a regular columnist for Wing Chun Illustrated magazine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'll be doing one. So I'm signed on to do the next year, and Wing Chun Illustrated comes out every 2 months. So basically 6 issues, and my column is going to be called Kung Fu Genius. So
nice. That's sweet.
Between the song and then the whole thing in the press, and now that's actually the column, and so it's pretty much, that's I guess what people call me now. So that's great. I guess there's worse things I could be called. So.
Oh yeah, shit that I call you when you're not around. So
worse yet, what my wife calls me is even way worse.
That's great.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll get into it, and we're gonna have, for those of you who heard the last podcast, we're gonna do a very similar format. We kind of broke the Sunum Tao form in the last episode in kind of 4 subheadings or subtopics, and we're gonna kind of do the same thing here. So, and Sean will talk about his take, and then I'll do mine. So pretty much the same format. So Chum Kiu, second form of Wing Chun. It's tonight's topic. We'll start with a pretty straightforward one. Chum Kiu mean. So in your experience, from what you learned from the Moyat lineage, what is your take on what the name Chum Kiu means?
Okay, so I understand Chum Kiu to mean looking for bridge. But I one of the things I've learned is that it's, at least from our take on it, from my take on it, is that people tend to get very literal about that translation, looking for bridge. My Sifu told me a story that one of his trips to Hong Kong with Moyat, he said he just saw, they were walking, and Moyat says, Tom, Chum Kiu. And he looked, and there was a short literally a little footbridge, like 8-foot little footbridge going over some water. And he said, look, it's just a little bridge, Chum Kiu. It's just a little bridge. And are we going into definitions yet, or just what it means? I don't know.
I think both. I think we can handle both of those as the first topic.
So I look at it as the Chum Kiu, looking for the bridge, seeking the bridge, however you want to define it. I look at it not so much as the bridge as a physical contact. And I know that's how most people, and Alex may, I don't know, we've literally never discussed this. Looking for this physical bridge contact. I look at it more as it's a bridge from the theory of Silam Tao to actual, how to put the theory into action. That you have to kind of cross this bridge from theory to action. That the first form really concentrates on teaching you something, but it doesn't so much teach you how to use it. You learn structure in the first form, but you don't learn how to use structure so much in the first form. You learn what centerline is, but you don't learn so much what to do with centerline, of its huge importance. These are lessons that were reserved, in my opinion, for Chum Kiu. And I kind of feel like the first form, whereas the first form, the lessons you learn are more about the self. You're understanding your plumb line, your idea of center, your structure, your tools, your energy. Chum Kiu is the bridge to teach you how to deal with an opponent. Not so much that it's a fighting form. I know people refer to it as the fighting form. I don't look at it as the fighting form. I look at it as it's teaching you how to take your structure and now deal with someone throwing a wrench into it. You have to now deal with energy from somebody else. And the lessons of Chum Kiu, I feel, build upon the lessons in the first form to teach you how to use those lessons with energy. Yeah, if I could say one more thing. I look at thank you so much. I was praying you said yes. I tend to just real quickly break down the three forms as you learn something in the first form, you learn how to move it in the second form, and you learn how to recover it in the third form. And I think that really applies here. Like, and if we're just going to take structure, just for just throwing a word out there, if you learn proper structure in the first form, you learn how to move with a proper structure in the second form, but not just learn how to move like take a step and slide type movement. It's learn how to move how you would move in relation to a bridge energy from somebody else. And that's how I look at Chum Kiu. Go!
Yeah. Well, you said everything I was going to say. Let's go on to the next topic.
Come on.
No, actually, it's interesting because you basically said you don't take a very literal take on what the terms mean. So you mean one of the definitions you gave, if I understood it correctly, is that it's kind of more metaphorical, going from the very theoretical Siunum Tao, now kind of bridging that into something that's a little bit more practical. And I think that's actually one of the ways I look at it. It's not the primary way, but I did write something similar to that effect in my recent book, where I talked about, like, if the Siunum Tao is basically teaching you what you need to know about yourself, self-knowledge, the center line, your balance, how to position your arms and all that. The Chum Kiu is then taking that knowledge and now putting it in some relation to an opponent. So it's very similar to in Sun Tzu's Art of War, which is that you must first know yourself, and if you know yourself, then you have to learn your enemy. And if you know yourself and your enemy, then you win all your battles, right? But many people, they don't have a strong understanding of self. And if they know a little bit about their enemy, they might have a chance. But if they really understand themselves, they understand their enemy, then they're going to have success. And this is basically, on the metaphorical side, I completely agree with you. I think that is, it's funny that you said that.
You just broke up really bad. Yes.
Oh, really? From what point? From what point?
You said you after Sun Tzu, you said you really know your enemy, and then right there you broke up.
So if we make a cut, you need to cut out even this stuff where we're talking about making a cut. All right?
I don't know if I can do that.
Leave this stuff in here. You totally need to do that, or we're gonna kill you.
Maybe we'll see.
All right. So okay. Yeah, so basically the idea is that if you know yourself and you know your enemy, then your chance of victory is 100%, at least according to the Sun Tzu's Art of War. So this is basically a beautiful way of looking at Chum Kiu metaphorically. I also take a quite literal of the terms Chum Kiu, although the terms Chum Kiu can be a bit problematic to other theories we have in Wing Chun. So for example, if we say search for the bridge, then we can mean that to mean searching for our opponent's bridge or the bridge arm or however it's typically defined. That's all well and good. However, to a major maxim in Wing Chun, which even all the streams, not just Leung Ting or any of the other Yip Man ones apply to, but basically most of them. Have you heard of this maxim, which is chase the body, don't chase the hands? Sure. Yeah, so it's very popular. You hear it in some form or another from the various Wing Chun schools. Like it's very common, right? So the idea meaning that if our opponents come at us, we don't want to be constantly hunting and chasing the arms, because you can easily be fooled by a jab, you can easily be faked by one punch that then goes low, and if you commit your hands to this punch that you think is coming and then the guy pulls back and hits you, well, why we don't want to chase hands there. It's a very dangerous game. If Wing Chun says we don't want to chase the hands, we want to go towards the opponent's body, and only if their arms are in the way do we stick, then doesn't the term search for the bridge contradict our abstention to hand chasing? Right. And the funny thing is, stuff all the time, and I hear Wing Chun talking heads online talking about, oh, you don't want to chase hands, and chasing hands is crap, which I totally agree with. Okay with the definition of the second form being search for the bridge, and I go, Do you not see some kind of contradiction in there, right? And I think I know, I talk about this in my book at length, so I don't want to be repetitive, but I think it's similar to the issue with the terminology for Xiu Nim Tao and Xiu Lin Tao, like what the older name might have been compared to the newer name. I firmly believe, based on the research and the things that I've seen, that the original term was not search, but it was sync.
Sync.
Because in Chinese, there are two words that sound identical. Chum. The only difference is the character. Characters pronounced chum means to sync, and the other one means to search. And because they sound identical, it's completely reasonable that somebody thought it was one over the other at some point and changed it. Now, for most of the Yip Man lineage, I should say, they use the search term.
Right.
So if you look at the character, it's Chum meaning search. And in the New Martial Hero interview with Yip Man from 1971, or 1972, sorry, he used the term Chum to search. So for that reason, I firmly believe that Grandmaster Yip Man himself used the search term, because that's the one he used in his interview. So that's the only proof we have, so we have to kind of go on it, right? And it's also the one that most of his students use. However, one of Yip Man's students, one of his very early period students, a guy named Roland Tong, whom I've met and I've interviewed him, and he also posted on Facebook that he believes the original term should be to sync. And there's some other lineages of Wing Chun in mainland China which still use the syncing term and not the search one. If you look at the form, there's a lot of moments where the arm is high and then it's brought down. And the elbow goes up, the elbow is brought back down. And this is a very common theme in Southern Chinese Kung Fu, that when we make contact with somebody's arms, we bring it down using a low shoulder and low elbow to bring it to somewhere where we have more leverage and it's more workable for us to control. Because the higher the arms are, the more difficult it is to control them, right? So there is some evidence to suggest that the original term may have actually been sync. So therefore, a lot of the mental gymnastics we have to go through to justify this term search may again kind of be at all, because the term may have actually been something different. Now, I use the search term because I'm still traditional to what Yip Man did in that sense. Mm-hmm. But slowly over time, I'm starting to believe that it's actually the sync term. And there's another, Wing Chun is not the originator of everything that Wing Chun people think it is, right? When Wing Chun people think that they're the first ones to come up with the idea of syncing or low elbow or this structure, that structure, whatever. And you actually find it's quite prevalent in a lot of the other Southern Chinese Kung Fu styles. So for example, Hong Kun, right, or Hung Gar as most people pronounce it, is probably the most orthodox Southern Shaolin Kung Fu style, right? And they have a famous maxim, like a samfat, like we have, Cham Chang Doi Bo. And that means sinking elbow, hands level with the shoulder. And what that usually means is, like, because they have these different postures from the different movements or whatever, the elbow is held low, just like it is in Wing Chun, but the hand is, or the fingertips are roughly shoulder height. And because they have two hands, it's in front of each shoulder. But Wing Chun advocates the center line. So our hands are not in front of the shoulders, they're in front of the middle. So I believe the Wing Chun people robbed this old Hong Kun motto, and instead of it being Cham Chang Doi Bo, which is sinking elbow parallel to the shoulder, they went Cham Chang Lok Bo, so which then became sinking elbow, dropping shoulder, meaning that you keep your shoulders and elbows down because they're on the center. And for that reason, the Chum character is still present in some of our original maxims. And it's prevalent enough that I believe that that may actually be the original title of the Chum Kiu, meaning to sink. But anyway, I'm not a historian. I'm not a researcher. And I'm not defending one over the other. I'm just presenting information. So people can feel free to disagree with me. I don't get the least bit butthurt at all because I have absolutely no attachment to it. I just read both sides of the argument. I find they're very interesting, and I present them. So Yeah, so I suppose that's a little slightly different answer than what you give. I just wanted to talk specifically terminology and the issues we have with hand chasing in that. So that's my take on that.
That's all I got to say about
That's
that.
all I got to say about that.
No, I mean I love that actually. That's really good. That was really good. And just to jump on one little thing, when you said like stick to the body, not to the hands, that
Yes.
I even tell my guys that like when they think of chisao, sticking hands, that one of the things that drives me nuts is people in their head envision sticking to their training partner's arms. And I always say, no, get that out of your head. Think sticking hands is if you're trying to stick to their core.
Right.
Follow you're sticking your energy to their core. And if you think that, all the arm movement just becomes extraterrestrial bullshit. You know what I mean?
Sure. It just so happens that the arms are in the way of actually hitting the opponent because their arms are in between. But your intention should be to go towards the body and not to the arms.
Right, exactly. That's
right.
it.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
So that's going to be the 7th episode. It's going to be on Chisao.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Honestly, we could probably even break that down into a couple episodes because we could talk about the formal Chisao exercises. We could talk about the Chisao sparring, how that relates to real fighting outside of the Wing Chun world. I mean, we could probably, and remember, we need to squeeze these topics as much as we can. We can't put it all in one episode. We don't have that much in Wing Chun. Remember, Wing Chun's a minor style. You can learn it very quickly.
Next week is Yiji Kim Yama.
That's right. Part 1. The 7 parts of the first stance, right? So yeah, great. So the next part I guess we're going to discuss is, so what is the purpose of Chum Kiu in terms of the overall progression? So we've taught our student the Siunam Tao form. At what point do they learn the Chum Kiu? Why do they learn the Chum Kiu? And so how does that fit, besides the fact that it's the second form, how does it fit into the overall progression?
Right. So like I alluded to before, I look at Chum Kiu is there to teach you how to move what you learned in the first form. And when should you learn Chum Kiu? When you can do the drills of the first form without falling over. When you no longer need to take a step in doing some of the static drills is when you learn 2-step. If you're always being pushed back or have to move to the side to do something like just rolling hands, luxao type of thing, with when you're learning and you're kind of going off center and that's not ready. You're not ready for Chum Kiu. You're ready for Chum Kiu when you no longer have to fall backwards to deal with forward energy. At least that's how I like to say it. In matter of time, practicality time, and we're going to be 9 months, a year of training in the first form before you move on to the second form. But
I think for most people, the progression is they start teaching themselves the second form from YouTube when they don't need to watch the first video anymore to get through to the end of the movements, right?
Right, exactly right.
So that varies depending on how well they can imitate movements they see that they don't understand.
Well, people need to look at least I shouldn't say, I look at Chum Kiu as it's a form that it teaches you how to move. And again, not so much as like this set of footwork versus that set of footwork. It teaches you how to move in relation to the energy that you're given by an opponent. When we do the breakdown of the form, I'm gonna explain how I see the energies and stuff. But think of it as like moving your center in a coordinated, self-synchronized way, a balanced way. Something that when you're feeling energy, how you could move either off center or through center, but without losing structure, without losing balance, without doing bad shit. So. Right. That's how and why we do the form, as far as I'm concerned.
Great. Well, yeah, similar. So obviously, we teach it, I think, in a similar time frame. Of course, it depends on the individual attainment of the student. I mean, we have students who we call them Wing Chun bums because they practically live at the school. We're throwing them
Right.
out at the end of the night, and they're there every day, and they come on the weekends, and they come 2 hours before training and start hitting the wall bag or whatever. So when you have those students,
Right.
they can
Sure.
progress through the information a little bit more quickly. Yeah, but about average like 6, 7, 8 months or whatever at the Sunam Tao level. We do it a little bit differently in terms of the Chi Sao progression. So for the first form, we keep it to single arm Chi Sao because Sunam Tao is primarily a single arm form. So all the Chi Sao they do is a single arm Chi Sao. Now we have a few different variations besides the standard single arm Chi Sao that's most of the Yip Man Wing Chun lineages have, with the Fuk Sao and defending the palm and the punch and the bong. That's the standard Dan Chi. And then we have a few different, I'm not going to say variations, I'm going to say progressions, where we add some turning and we add some different reactions. And then we do some diagonal single arm Chi Sao and stuff like that. And we do some exercises to develop the forward pressure and whatnot. So we have a relatively robust single arm Chi Sao program. And that's what they stick with when they're learning the first form. When they start learning Chum Kiu, that's when they learn double arm Chi Sao, starting with the Pun Sao or Lok Sao cycle or whatever you want to call it. And then so we don't teach the double arm Lok Sao cycle until they start learning Chum Kiu. But at the same time, in the WT program, we focus a lot on practical sparring right from the beginning. So alongside learning the classical program of Sunam Tao and single arm Chi Sao, we also teach them how to defend a straight punch, a swing, a tackle, a kick, that kind of stuff, using the basic movements from the first form. And then when they learn Chum Kiu, they start learning double arm Chi Sao, and then we teach them some more involved fighting applications and so on and so forth, like elbows and knees and things like that. But the Chum Kiu form, they will stay at the Chum Kiu form for a little bit because there's a lot of information in Chum Kiu and Sunam Tao. So once they start learning the double arm Chi Sao, we have a number of different Chi Sao programs so that they can learn how to use all the concepts and ideas from the first two forms integrated into double arm Chi Sao, both in the formal exercises and in sparring. Of course, the Chum Kiu is important because it introduces the three basic stances. It introduces turning, a lot of special hand techniques, bridges, bong sao, wu sao as a turning technique and all that kind of stuff. So there's a tremendous amount of information in the second form to be internalized. That's why when people they teach themselves the second form on YouTube and concoct a couple Chi Sao drills and then they're off the next week to the Buji form, I'm like, wow, that's pretty incredible. I think they don't have any idea about how much information is really contained in the first two forms. That's why I tell my students that Sunam Tao and Chum Kiu operating system. They're the OS of Wing Chun. Because for me, Buji is something you only need in certain situations, perhaps only against certain types of opponents. And it's not something that you necessarily need to resort to in every conflict that you engage in. So I'm like, Sunam Tao and Chum Kiu is really your bread and butter, and that's what they need to get good at. And that's why in the program, we spend a lot of time at this level so that they not just get good at the form, but that they can also do the things contained in the form as well. And probably in the whole teaching progression, students spend the most time at Sunam Tao and Chum Kiu level than the other levels, because if the foundation is laid very well at Sunam Tao and Chum Kiu, it's a lot easier to go through Buji and Wooden Dummy because the foundation is there. But if they're missing pieces of the foundation, you actually end up having to spend a lot more time fixing things later. So that's kind of one of the ways we look at it in terms of the progression. And also, if you imagine that learning Wing Chun is like learning a language, and your goal is to converse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then Sunam Tao is like learning ABCs. And Chum Kiu is like learning words. And Chi Sao is like learning grammar and usage. And sparring is conversation. So if you look at all these different things that if you use the language analogy, it makes a little bit more sense. Like then Chum Kiu is basically learning words and phrases. Chi Sao is learning grammar and correction and correct use of these words and phrases. And things like Buji and Wooden Dummy, they're almost more like learning debate and rhetoric and more advanced forms of communication. But the actual goal is conversation, which is the fight. So that's how we look at it. And yeah, so I hope I didn't go too off topic on that one.
No, not at all. It's actually very good. I was actually really looking forward to this because this podcast in specific, because like most Wing Chun people, excuse me, sorry, like most Wing Chun people,
You're getting choked up about it, I can tell.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to cry. Chum Kiu was always one of my favorite form. It's like you do the first form for so long. It can be a little repetitive. It can be boring. You're not moving. At least the way I learned. All the drills you're doing are very static. When you're doing Chum Kiu now, you're moving around. You're doing some stuff. It becomes like your favorite form. And at least for me it was.
Right.
And I've been actually absolutely looking forward to hearing you talk about it, because I have a couple of different perspectives when it comes to Chum Kiu. I learned from Steve and from Tom, and I'm not going to lie. A lot of my thoughts on Chum Kiu come from a lot of sources. You know what I mean? I like to read. I like to. I think I dive pretty deep into this form. I spent a lot of time thinking about this form, and absolutely had influence in a lot of the readings of by David Peterson. Genuflect when you say his name, and that's one thing I have to say is like when I'm talking about the forms, I can't speak to Moyat specific. This is only in Moyat Wing Chun we do this, or in Moyat Wing Chun we do it exactly this way. That's why I like to talk in terms of what I do and what I teach.
Right. And you also made the point on the podcast last week that even though we've been friends for a while, we've had lots of conversations, but oddly enough, most of our martial art conversations, whether they were in Wing Chun or Jeet Kune Do, have always kind of been a little bit more general and a little bit more about the kind of culture surrounding the arts that we do. And these podcasts, this is actually, like you said it last week, but I don't think the audience really understands it. Like, despite the fact that we've known each other for a while, this is really the first time we're sitting down and talking about these things, like in detail, like how you look at it, how I look at it. And so this is totally fresh. Like this is.
Alex and I have never spoken like this before. I mean, we really don't even like each other all that much. But no,
it's like Siskel and Ebert. Like people didn't really know that they actually didn't get along.
When Alex and I hang out, it's more about, we talk a lot more about MMA.
Yeah,
I think our general conversation is more MMA than Kung Fu, and like you said, more like stuff in general, honestly, a lot of our conversations when it comes to Kung Fu is me reaching out to Alex and asking him advice on dealing with students, things to that effect, because even though I'm 15, 20 years older than him, he's got a lot more teaching experience than I do. So that a lot of our conversation is about that, and and complaining about our wives. But
hey now, you're gonna get me in trouble. My wife is in the next room.
I'm just kidding.
Lucky I have the headphones on; she can't hear anything. That's funny too. Yeah. Also, like to go back to the point you made a moment ago about the Chum Kiu being kind of the most fun form, because it's like when you're learning the Sunam Tao and then you learn Chum Kiu, it's like a really big deal because you're moving around. I made a point in my book of saying like the Sunam Tao is learning to stand with a book on your head. When you learn Chum Kiu, you're allowed to now move with that book on your head. You know what I mean? So it's like, wow, now I can actually do something. So it is kind of that next step. So the next category or topic or whatever is a similar one to we have with the Sunam Tao. How do you break up the form, divide the form? So like with the Sunam Tao, we had 3 parts. We did 8 sets. How do you break up the form in terms of structure, in terms of teaching? Or anything else you might have to say about the divisions within the form.
Okay, so when I take Chum Kiu and break it down in a similar way to sit them down, the fact that it's in 3 parts. What do you got, a party going on over there?
Yeah, actually, it was funny. I was just like listening for a moment. I was like, yeah, I forgot we have a review class again. We had one last week before we have big exams for like the high levels, which are very in my school, we have like test prep classes where they come and they do dry runs through the sparring and the forms, and then their seniors are checking their form and giving them notes and all that kind of stuff. So they're basically hanging out right before that class is starting right now. So they're getting all their giggles out before the hard work gets put in.
If you take your headphones off, I'll yell them to shut the fuck up. We're doing a podcast.
There's always background noise in all of our podcasts, whether it's it's all the scores of police finding dead bodies in Staten Island on your end, or it's the fire department somewhere here on the Manhattan side of things. There's always crazy stuff going on.
All right, so I break the form down into 3 sections, just like I did with the first form. I feel that the 3 sections are taught through the use and idea of Bong Sao, but they're not Bong Sao specific. I feel that the 3 sections are broken down by energy, and so before Alex said that everybody in Wing Chun thinks that Wing Chun invented everything. Well, when he said that, something popped into my head, which I had not thought of before. So I always break down Chum Kiu in like the first section where it's like dissolving energy, or the bridge has already been gapped. The gap's already been bridged. There is contact, and you're receiving energy, and you're learning to diffuse the energy. The second section is this idea of it's taught with a throwing Bong Sao. So this idea of your Bong Sao is meeting their energy. They launch an attack, you launch something at the same time. It's taught with a Bong Sao, but it can be anything, a strike, whatever needs to be there. So you're meeting the energy. And the third section with the Dai Bong, the low Bong Sao section, and it's done stepping forward. I teach it as you're launching the attack. You're launching the technique. You're giving the forward energy. So the first one is they've attacked and you're dealing with it. You're diffusing it. The second one is a picture the idea of you attack at the same time, and you're going to meet energy. And the third one is you're initiating, okay? And these 3 sections are taught with the Bong Sao. But now, like Alex said earlier, where the Wing Chun people think that they invented everything, while he was saying this, and I'm thinking Chum Kiu in my head, I grew up loving samurai swords. I've said on the podcast before that one of my favorite books of all time is the book Musashi by Yuji Asakawa, which if Alex, you ever take a vacation, you must read. It's amazing.
Vacation? What is that?
Yeah, I know. It's but anyway, in Miyamoto Musashi's book, the Book of Five Rings, he talks about it's Ken no Sen. I think it's Ken no Sen, Tai no Sen, and Tai Tai no Sen, and it's the same.
Your Japanese is just like your Brooklyn English.
Well, translate this. Go fuck yourself.
I wish I had a Japanese friend here to hear that. That'd be great.
And the best part about it is
Wing Chun.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was like, when Wing Chun people are like Pak Sao or Sunim Dao or something like that, and then just the Cantonese speakers are just going, "Oh my god!" I would have loved to have seen the look on a Japanese dude's face when you said that. Ninjutsu, ninjutsu.
All right, so I'm from Brooklyn. What can I say? I mean well, though. We both know I mean well.
Of course.
So the idea of the energies meeting, like it kind of lined up with what is how I teach the energies in Chum Kiu. Kind of lines up with what was taught in Musashi's Book of Five Rings, written in 1650 or something.
Right.
So so I break it down: first section, second section, third section, without getting into specifics too much as far as techniques and stuff like that, because that's what your sifus are for. We're not here to teach you the forms. We're just here to give you some ideas. The first section, the idea of the energy is taught through the Bong Sao. A shifting Bong Sao teaches you the idea of borrowing, diffusing, redirecting energy. The timing of it is after the attack. So the person attacked you, they're attached, and you have to deal with it. You have energy going to your center, and you have to shift and diffuse that energy and do something with it. Some of the, you have to learn to use that Bong Sao and Lan Sao to borrow force, relax under pressure, things to that effect. You have to learn how to pivot to redirect force, and learning how to bring your elbow to center to again, just everything is diffusing. The idea of going from Lan Sao right into that shifting bomb is that's not just the only diffusion there. It's from there going back. This idea of going from Bong Sao into Lan Sao, you're now just diffusing energy going the other way. And I've spoken before about having this idea of, and I don't have a word for it or anything, this idea of like a triangle in front of you, and your the center line fence kind of going from your plumb line to your opponent's plumb line. The idea of just diffusing people off of that center line fence to take it, I feel, is taught in the first section of Chum Kiu. The second section is this, again, with, of course, there's the footwork and the idea of coordinating how your Bong Sao, again, taught with the Bong Sao, but can be anything. The idea of the body being synchronized, this idea of self-synchronization, of being able to literally move properly and not lose structure and balance, is taught within the second section. And it's taught with this idea of the energy involved, is this idea of throwing bong, and teach you how to make contact when their hands are not in the correct position. Just boom, throw the arms up to, they're attacking, you're attacking, or they're attacking, you Bong Sao. Whatever it is, you're literally gonna just create that bridge and take it. And the timing is you're attacking during their attack. The footwork could be taught going forward. It's equally relevant and important to know that same exact footwork in the opposite direction. And just because the form teaches you to move stepping forward doesn't mean you can't learn to step backwards. You have to take a little bit of initiative and not just be so structured as to what the form teaches you that you're not going to learn the footwork going in the opposite direction. And of course, you learn some basic kicking. The third section I break down is the Dai Bong section, right? The low Bong Sao. And I know I probably fucked up how you say Dai Bong, but this idea.
No, it's perfect.
This idea of low Bong Sao, and the idea of teaching the jamming. I call it jamming with the Bong Sao, but again, it could be with anything. The founders of the system, in my opinion, chose Bong Sao to teach energy. That, especially in the second form, whenever you see Bong Sao, replace it with anything, because you're just learning energy. And the timing is before they attack. So I'm learning how to throw my energy forward with proper structure, with proper timing. And there's different uses for the low Bong Sao and the Quan Sao and things to that effect. And that's kind of how I break down the form. Yeah, there's a whole bunch more go into it. And I know some.
You mean that wasn't everything?
No, Alex, there's 3 more things, but I'm not telling them because you know what? They're a fucking secret, and you got to pay me a lot more money for that.
Yes.
What, did I talk too much?
No. I was just making a joke. Like we could talk about this literally for hours on end and still have plenty of stuff that we have not even broached as a topic or covered. I think obviously the people who practice some legit stream of Wing Chun, they understand this. It's actually really difficult to do anything exhaustive in terms of talking about this stuff because it's so multifaceted and there's so many different topics within topics. Right. However, there'll be some people who might listen to this and go like, everything I'll ever need to know about Chum Kiu, and now they'll go off and make their own videos on YouTube where they're basically just rehashing stuff we said. It's kind of like when Eddie Murphy talked about, I think it was either in Raw or Delirious, how like people would go to his shows and then on Monday they'd go back to work and mess up his jokes. They would try to retell his jokes and totally mess it up. It's like you can expect a slew of Facebook Wing Chun videos where you're going to find some really hacked version of what we've been talking about in these. So yeah, in terms of breaking it down, yeah, the Chum Kiu doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't have a super clear way of breaking it into pieces. Most of the Yip Man Wing Chun lineages, I think, break it into 3 parts in pretty much the same exact way that you did it. I also generally broke it down into 3 parts for most of my teaching career. However, now that I'm writing the Chum Kiu book, I actually had to say exactly how I did that, and I realized that breaking it into 4 parts worked a little bit better in terms of, because for me, traditionally the form may have been 3 parts, like the Sunam Tao may have been 3 parts, but I find because my teacher, I'm an educator, so I'm always trying to find better ways of streamlining the information, because I'm not teaching one student privately. I'm teaching many people over the course of a long time. So I'm always looking for better ways to disseminate information. So I divide it into 4. Now the Chinese hate the number 4. Why? Because the number 4 is really unlucky in Chinese culture. For people who don't know, for Chinese, the number 4 is like what the number 13 is for us. And the reason is the number 4 in Chinese sounds like the word for death. So the number 4 in Cantonese is say, right? And to die is say. So the only difference is tonal, but they sound so like, that's why you don't find, like, they try to avoid things like having a 4th floor, or they don't like telephone numbers that have a lot of 4s in it, or any kind of numbers. They try to avoid it on their license plates and things like that, because it's kind of a bad thing. So of course, from the traditional perspective, if I tell the Chinese I divide it into 4 parts, they're going to be like, oh, it's no good. Why you do that? But for me, I'm not superstitious. I'm also not Chinese. And so dividing it into 4 parts does not raise the hairs on the back of my neck thinking it's okay. So for me, the first part is from the opening, and then the bongsa with turning on both sides, which, like you said, most of that stuff's when you already have contact with your opponent and you're diffusing the force and shifting out of the center to let the power go away, as well as things like pak sao, palm strike, lan sao, and things like that, and the pai zhang, elbow strikes and things. The second part is the next bit with the pao zhang, or throwing bong sao, like you call it. Some people call it dapo bong sao, or pao zhang bong, the throwing elbow bong sao. There are a lot of different ways to call it. In that section, Sifu Leung Ting made a modification. We don't do a front kick in that section. We do a side kick. Explain that in a moment. And that's the part that I call part 2. So it's the side kick, the 3 throwing bong saos, and then the lifting punch, which is kind of like our version of an uppercut, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have that on both sides. The third part is the front kick with the tai bong, like the low bong sao. And then at the end of that set, we have a double man sao movement where the arms go up, which is also a modification from Sifu Leung Ting. And then that's the third part. The fourth part for me is that final kick, and then the gum saos and stuff like that, because that last part is a little bit different, because you're not stepping, you're turning. And the kick is also different. I call that a separate section. I call that the fourth part, like the ending. So that's how I divide it. It just makes it a little bit easier for me thematically when I'm teaching it. But to say I have 3 parts, I have 4, I mean, it's no big deal. Again, right. I don't get the least bit butthurt about people having a different way of dividing the forms they teach in their school. I don't feel responsible for what other people teach. Unlike many other Wing Chun people, they always get upset because somebody else is teaching something different than the way they do it. And I'm always going, why do you care how somebody else teaches it? Why aren't you just concerned with the way you do it? You know, it's like people are so crazy. Like they don't have enough going on in their lives that they have to bitch about how other people do things that are totally unrelated to their own lives. Is ridiculous, right? So that actually takes us into the last part, which is about the modifications. Now, since I already started talking about it, let me just continue that, and then I'll throw it back to you in terms of whether there were modifications in the Moyat lineage, or different from how Yip Man taught it, or different from how Moyat taught in the early period, or maybe it's always been the same. You know, you can say that. So in the Chum Kiu form, the way we do it in WT Wing Chun, so let's say Leung Ting derived Wing Chun, there are 3 major modifications that Sifu Leung Ting made himself to the Chum Kiu. One was the side kick. The second one is the double man sao. And the third one is what we call the Kiu Dai Kun, or the under the bridge punch. And the first one, the side kick, well, the reason he added the side kick was this. Most Wing Chun students, whether you look at the early period, you look at Bruce Lee, you look at the old days, whatever, most of them use some kind of Wing Chun side kick, like a low side kick or something like that. It's somewhere in their application mix or whatever, right? But it didn't actually make an appearance in the forms until the wooden dummy. Like you really don't see a side kick until the wooden dummy form, because Byuji doesn't have any kicks, like side kicks or anything like that, right? So a very common kick, like the side kick, although the bread and butter kick of Wing Chun is the straight kick. That is like, you could call it the one true kick, right? But we have three basic kicks in Wing Chun: the front kick, the side kick, and then the slant kick or the slant angle kick, right? The one at the end of the Chum Kiu. But in Grandmaster Yip Man's Chum Kiu form, he didn't have that. He had the front kick repeated 2 times on each side. So you had one with the grappling hand and the Lancel front kick, and then you had the turn and the front kick, right? But basically it was the same kick, but it was done because you have kind of 2 repetitions on each side, and then you have the slant kick done on the left side. At least the Wing Chun people teach. Of course, there are people who have since changed the forms, and there are people who've made up their own forms. So those, we consider those the outliers. So we don't factor them into the equation. We're just talking about what's generally orthodox in Yip Man Wing Chun, if it's even possible to use the term orthodox with Grandmaster Yip Man. Ching was doing research for the book Roots of Wing Chun. He found that in Fatsan, at least according to him, that he had found some older manuals that reference Leung and the older Wing Chun period, and said that the Chum Kiu form should have 3 unique kicks of side kick, front kick, and the slant kick. Now, it seems to make sense because in Wing Chun, okay, excluding the wooden dummy, we have 3 hand forms. We have 3 basic hand techniques: Bong, Tan, Fok. 3 types of elbows in Byuji. We have 3 types of palm. We repeat the Wu Sao or the Fok Sao 3 times. So this number 3 is very prevalent. Things are repeated 3 times again and again and again in Chum Kiu, right? And so the number 3 is extremely vital to Chinese culture, not just in Wing Chun, but just in culture in general. You have 3 philosophies: Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism. So the number 3 is like a really big deal. They love numbers that are divisible by 3, 3, 9, 12, 36, 108, all these things that can be divided cleanly by 3. They love these things, right? And again, some of that is superstition. So to say that then Wing Chun has 3 basic kicks kind of falls in line with we have 3 of this, 3 of that, 3 of this, right? So according to Sifu Leung Ting, he basically re-added the side kick to the Chum Kiu. So he believes at some point somebody edited, took it out, forgot it, and then just doubled up on the front kick and forgot to put a side kick in there. So believe that or not believe that or whatever, for people who learn Leung Ting Wing Chun or WT in some form or another, we have 3 unique kicks, and so that's the way we teach it. But I'm aware that Leung Ting is the one who modified it, but he modified it based on his research on the older versions. Just even WT people don't know that. When some WT people look, for example, at the Moyat Chum Kiu, they'd be like, how come they don't have a side kick? That looks wrong. But it's because they're ignorant, because they don't know that Leung Ting was the one who put the side kick in there. They're even ignorant of their own martial art, right? And so if I look at the Moyat Chum Kiu where they do the front kick on both sides, I go, yeah, that's the orthodox one. That's the standard one. It's the same way Yip Man did it in the video, right? But for some reason, WT people think that like many other lineages, they think that that's the way it was always done because they just don't know, right? The second edition was the double mansel, which is at the end of the what I call the third part. After you do the front kick and the dive bong 3 times, you do this basically you extend your arm straight up ahead, and this is a defense for an overhead strike, like something you would find in Choi Lei Fut, like from a hanging punch or like a hammer fist strike from over, where you basically turn your arm into a slide for the strike to run down. Because in most of the Orthodox Wing Chun, these were for things that came directly to you or around, but they didn't really have something coming from above down. And most Wing Chun people dealt with it just by moving out of the way, but there was no real hand technique. But in the knife form, we have a movement called mando, where if somebody gives you like an overhead strike with a like a broadsword or something like that, where you lift your knife up there so that you would catch it and it would slide down and then you would cut the guy. So Leung Ting basically retrofitted the knife technique unarmed form so that the students would have a movement to defend against the overhead swing punch, which was very prevalent because of Choi Lei Fut. And in fact, he told the story that one time he got in a street fight. This was before he learned from Yip Man, but when he was Leung Sung's student. And he got in a street fight, and then somebody attacked him from overhead, like with kind of like a hammer fist strike, like just some weird, stupid punch, right? And when Sifu Leung-Ting recalls the story, he says, in the moment he looked up and he saw this punch coming at him, like sometimes in fights, like things flash before your eyes and you kind of think for a moment. It's like you're almost in your own space for a second. And he remembers saying, shit, I don't know how to stop that. And then the punch came, boom, and hit him on the top of the head. And he kind of stumbled back, and then he eventually went forward and, punched the guy or whatever, right? But then it always bugged him that, he was like, oh, I couldn't use Bong Sao against an overhead strike, couldn't use Tan Sao. There needs to be something against an overhead strike. And then he told me that later when he had the chance to take private lessons from Yip Man, he asked him, and then Yip Man told him that, well, there is this one move in the knife form, and then showed him the Mando from the knife form, and this is for an overhead weapon, and this can be, I suppose, retrofitted as an unarmed technique. So then Leung-Ting added that to the Chum Kiu form. So that was also his modification. And then the final one is he added, at the very end when you do the chain punches, we have the jumping punch, and then we have one punch that goes under the bridge, kind of like how Buji goes under the arm instead of over. And that's just like, when your arm is really high up and you can't chain punch over the top, you could cut underneath. So that was clearly something he kind of borrowed a little bit from Buji. Instead of doing it with an open hand, he did it with a fist. And that's basically his third modification. So for people who do WT, they need to know that those three things were actually things that Sifu Leung-Ting changed later in the form. He had good reason to do it, but they need to understand that that's not necessarily the traditional Yip Man way. So those are the modifications we have. Now, in terms of the Moyat lineage, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I mean, the idea is that it's pretty straight orthodox the way he learned it. I mean, have there been any modifications from Yip Man's time or from how Moyat taught in the early days? Did he change it later, or has it always been the same?
Okay, so I know of one thing that some people refer to as a modification. How I learned it as sometimes Yip Man taught it a certain way, but then sometimes he taught it this way also. Like in Buji, when you do the shifting Fuksao, sometimes it was taught that you shift on the heel, and sometimes you was taught that you shift on the ball of the foot. And he said, like, both are correct. He does it, Moyat did it a certain way, but he said, if you see this, both are correct. And it's so funny you brought up the side kick, because in Moyat Wing Chun, at the end, okay, so right at the end of the third section, where most systems do that slant kick, Moyat Wing Chun does a side kick.
Interesting.
So you come back, you do the third bong sao, dai bong.
Yeah.
Stop, come.
Right. Then you
turn,
have the pivot.
Just shift, you pivot, side kick, land, gom sao. So we do a side kick also.
Interesting.
Yeah, we don't.
But you don't have the slant kick in there.
We don't have a slant kick.
Interesting. Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. I learned that. That's great. I've seen some people who had like a taekwondo background, and then they had learned like the Moyat lineage later, and they did like a full-on taekwondo sidekick with the hip pivot and everything like that. And I always thought, oh, he must be doing that because he's a taekwondo guy, because I couldn't imagine that's how Sifu Moyat did it. But I didn't realize that there was actually a sidekick. I thought this taekwondo guy had just changed it because he was a taekwondo guy.
No, in fact, I'm gonna send you a video, and I want you to watch it. Matter of fact, maybe I'll post it from the Dudes of Kung Fu page. One of my my Sibak, Pete Pahil in Philadelphia. He has the best Chum Kiu that I've ever seen in the Moyat lineage. Like, it's just phenomenal. And you can see the form, and you'll see the sidekick, and I think you'll appreciate it. I'll post it.
Cool.
Matter of fact, I'll post it as soon as
awesome.
we're done. I just think. Do you have on your Howcast videos? Do you have videos of you doing the forms?
I didn't do the Chum Kiu. The only video I show, the only form, that I show on the Howcast series is the Sunamtao form, because basically Howcast came to me and they had like all these topics, and the topics were based on Google searches, right? So they contacted me and they said, "Oh, we're looking for a Wing Chun expert. We found you. You're in New York," because they're also in New York, so it was easy for them to come to me. And all the topics that I did those videos on were based on what people search for in Google in regards to Wing Chun. So it was like, what is Pak Sao, or what is Sunamtao, or whatever. Now, of course, there were many Google search items like Bachamdo form because people want to see
Right,
it, right?
right.
It's like the grand pornography of the Wing Chun style, are the weapons forms and the dummy, right? So of course, at that time I had just left Sifu Leungting's organization. That's like when I was fresh out.
Right.
So I was no longer part of the IWTA. And I think that was maybe like within 6 months or something like that of me quitting. And I was still very conservative about what I wanted to show. And for those people, I get compliments on that series all the time. When I look at it, I showed very to Bible of Leungting Wing Chun there. I didn't show anything that was kind of rocking the boat or anything like that. It was very standard, and it's very basic in terms of what I teach. That's not even a skeleton of my program. It's very basic, but a lot of people really like it because maybe I was the first WT guy who didn't do nothing but chain punch the shit out of my partner, and I actually attempted to explain something beyond stepping and chain punching, right?
Right, sure.
But of course, some of the questions they had was like Chum Kiu form, Buji form, wooden dummy, and I just was not in the mood to reveal all those things. And not like the Chum Kiu form is really advanced. And Leungting had already put out the Chum Kiu form, whatever.
That's big time stuff. I mean, I understand that. That's not.
You know what? I don't really think it helps people if there's another video of somebody doing the Chum Kiu out there. So instead, if you type in like Alex Richter how cast Chum Kiu, you'll find like 3 or 4 videos where I talk about different topics about the Chum Kiu, which I find are actually more valuable than just another form of somebody showing his version of the Chum Kiu. Because it's like, hey, why? If you want to see the Chum Kiu, you can Google Leungting's doing the Chum Kiu from 1984. You can see what the WT Chum Kiu looked like. At least at that time, there's been a couple changes since then. But it's no big mystery or anything like that. But I don't think that what people want to do is they want to hear whys, the hows, the more in-depth stuff, which is, I think, why these podcast episodes have been so popular, because this is exactly what you don't find on YouTube. You can find 100 people showing a Chum Kiu, showing a Siunam Tao, but going in there, explaining anything in any kind of depth that's meaningful to anybody who really practices, right?
Right.
So that's basically what it was. So they had like they wanted me to show the Bachamdo video, and then I was like, so I just talked about. I have a video where I just talk about the knives. Oh, the knife should be like this. You should hold it like this, and that's it. And then the long pole video, I'm like, hey, you should hold it like this and not like this and that. But everyone thinks when they click on that video, they're going to see the long pole form. It's like, no, buddy, sorry. I paid way too much money to learn that damn thing. Sure. I'm not giving it away for free.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree, dude. I agree. People, anyway. I get shit from people like, oh, so what are their secrets? I'm like, no, it's not a secret, but I broke my ass to fucking learn this. I'm
funny?
Not gonna just give it away for nothing. What are you kidding me?
It's like, look, it's funny. It's two sides of a coin. Look, there really shouldn't be any secrets, because the moment you keep things secret, they don't get practiced. That's why anybody who says they learned a secret style of Wing Chun and they were the only one who learned it, well, when the hell did the guy who taught it to you ever practice it if he never showed it to anybody? So the thing is, things don't grow when they're a secret. They rot, all right? So secrets are bad anyway. But the problem is, it's funny that Chun instructor, but I'm very open to my own students who are dedicated and they come in and they put in the work. But people who I have no relationship to, they come at you like, oh, why are you keeping secrets, as if we owe them anything. It's like, first of all, you're not the one coming into my school busting your ass 5 days a week, yet you expect me to just give it to you to the same way somebody who really earns it through their sweat equity would get it from me. And it's like, yeah, everybody's always like, oh man, that's bullshit. That guy keeps secrets or whatever, because it's just like this. Everybody is your brother for free.
Right.
And I've been doing this too long. I see through that ruse right away. Oh, everyone's my brother. They want to be cool and they want to come to my school and see how much they can squeeze out of me for free. And it's like, I got a schedule, man. You want to learn from me, you can email the head office and book a lesson. This podcast is about the most you'll get from me for free.
Right, exactly right. I mean, like it happens, like people are like, oh, well, you don't own the truth. And I'm like, no, I don't. But I own my own curriculum.
Exactly.
And they're like, well, why are you keeping secrets? I'm not keeping secrets. I tell my students everything.
You don't own the truth, but you should give it to me anyway because, well, I'm asking you for it. Yeah, but you see, they don't understand. You don't own the truth, yet you still have something I want.
Right.
And they're trying to somehow tell you this valuable thing that they want isn't valuable at all, so you should just give it to them. It's like, dude, you can't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. I see what you're doing. and you know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's not valuable. This valuable thing I have is not valuable, so I should give it to you anyway. It's like, come on, man. All right, get in line and put in the time. If anybody puts in the time, it's not just about money, it's putting in the sweat equity. More than happy to give them everything. And I don't hold any secrets to people who come and work hard. But people who are lazy and just want to, people come to my school and they ask me one question and I show them something and they go, oh, can I teach that? And I go, you don't even know it. You just asked me a question. That's completely absurd.
You just learned it. You just learned of its existence 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, but you haven't actually been taught it or trained it or corrected on it. But yeah, go knock yourself out. Go make a video and teach that thing you thought I taught you in 30 seconds. Good luck with that. So anyway, but hey, man, this was really great. We hit all the points or whatever. This was really a lot of fun. And our topic next week, the Buji. Ooh, getting even more into the depths of the secret stuff.
Make sure you close the doors and pull down the shades. We're gonna cover the Buji, the secret form. Thank God awesome. You gave me a week's notice so I can make this shit up.
Yeah, we can go look online, look at YouTube videos, and figure out stuff to say next week. Because as anyone who's really in the know knows, all this stuff we're telling you guys, we just stole it off other people's YouTube videos.
Exactly right. That's why I was asking
all right, man.
Hey,
this was a lot of fun. That's right. Yeah, because you want more. You want more. Hey, all of you guys out there, don't forget to like us on Facebook, Dudes of Kung Fu, if you have not done that already. Don't forget to share these podcasts on your social media. So when the episodes come out, put it on your Twitter, put it on your Facebook, put it on your MySpace, whatever the hell you guys are into. Put it on there. Get it out there. Let people know you like it. Also, don't forget to write reviews for us on iTunes because those things really do help to push the podcast a little bit. And if you have anything you want us to talk about in specifically regarding the Buji form for the next episode, go ahead and send us some correspondence at the Dudes of Kung Fu Facebook page. And that is all from here, man.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Enjoy your week. Bye-bye.